All right. Yep, you get to see what I'm doing. Ha ha ha. What a goose I am. Let's go ahead and pull that up real quick. We can close all this other stuff out. And as always, doing our audio checks. If you're out there and you're listening and I haven't already checked, let me know if it's going well. Oh, beautiful. You guys get to hear my melodious voice. Heck yeah. Uh, all right. As the title suggests, whoa, that was wild. As the title suggests, we're going to talk about demons today. We're going to talk about a few other things, but that is the main thing. Before we dig in, I'm going to be upfront with everybody. My experience into demons is fairly limited. I've hit them maybe once at a tournament, and then the only local players we have, hey, what's up? Yeah. And it looks like my chat bot is working. So hopefully, uh, everybody, if you're on YouTube, can see, and everybody, if you're on Twitch, can see. So that's awesome. Thank you, Dan, for that check. My experience into demons is pretty limited. So what we're going to be doing is going over, my takeaway from the few times I've gotten to play them, plus how I would approach them should I come up against them. Now, this will be from my perspective. And what do I mean by that? Remember, I tend to kind of play a little bit different breed. We need to maybe rotate. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. I tend to play a little bit different breed of Drukhari, as I don't really bring as many dark lances as a lot of you probably do, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm good. Alexa, I assume. Trying to read that. Alexa Nelson. I'm doing well. How are you? So yeah, that's what. Oh, that also got the local Amazon Alexa to go off, and she's angry now. Good deal. Glad to hear it. And if you're on Twitch, feel free to say hi to YouTube. If you're on YouTube, say hi to Twitch. My days are always good. Thank you for asking. Every day I wake up is a good day for me. Yeah, if I can wake up and I can eat breakfast and breathe and stuff, it is very good. But yeah, I don't tend to play as much in the way of dark lances as a lot of you do, and there's nothing wrong with it. It just I tend to play a little bit different brand of 40k, and I recognize that. Like I'm just kind of a goof. But what I play works for me, and if what you're playing works for you, that's awesome. The big question I had about demons was, hey, if I'm playing against demons and they just have a ton of greater demons, how do I overcome that? What can I do to kind of work around that? So before we dig into maybe strategies, moving, and stuff like that, let's dig into some of these greater demons. We're going to do it a little bit differently today. Hopefully everybody can see this. Got a little blue stacks action so we can. This is definitely not the official app that I'm sharing with everybody on the internet. Index, data sheets. So let's look at some of these data sheets. Hopefully everybody's visibility is good. So let's start with Bellicor because he's the biggest of the bad, right? He's T10, he's a 4-up save, but he does have a 4-up invuln, so it's just 4-up all the time. So I do a lot of 40k and a lot of Sigmar, so a lot of tabletop strategy. Going to be doing a lot of old world, and I do a lot of competitive play. So a lot of what I talk about is coming from the perspective of somebody who runs a lot of tournaments and then goes and plays at a lot of tournaments, and also some Blood Bowl, which we'll kind of talk about towards the end here too. So this handsome fella here has 2 ranged attacks. Well, it's really 1 ranged attack. You pick the profile. 18-inch range, and it's 9 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 5, neg 2, 1 damage, or 12 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, neg 3, 1 damage. But it is all devastating wounds. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It is devastating wounds. It is hazardous if you do the supercharge, and it ignores cover. So This is obviously going to be brutal into our army. Broke a core. So yeah, honestly though, I will tell you, my few interactions into him were pretty funny. And don't get me wrong, it was rough. Both of my interactions were rough, but it's one of those where it is what it is. I'm just gonna do my best to kind of work around him. I imagine he's a menace in AOS also. I will say with Sigmar, I have noticed in my limited experience, if your character has a name, it's gonna be even sillier than they are in 40k. But I also have noticed that Sigmar tends to lean into the silliness a little bit more, so it doesn't necessarily feel as bad when you hit those types of units. I don't know if that's kind of your experience with Sigmar, but that has been mine. But again, I've only played a handful of games. I think I'm up to 12 total games, and 9 of them have been at tournaments. 8 of them have been at tournaments. I'm just kind of like showing up with models and letting Jesus take the wheel. He does Deadly Demise, Deep Strike. He has Stealth, so he's -1 to hit against ranged attacks. And then he's got a 6-inch aura of You Are Within the Shadow. Oh, right on. Okay. Yeah, so my first 2 tournaments that I did, I've only played like 3 games with my squigs. All the other games have been with 2,000 points worth of dryads, because that was basically everything I owned. So my perception of what's broken is a little skewed, because I already understand that what I'm playing is not inherently competitive. And at the start of the battle round, you select one shadow form ability, and then this model has that ability. Let's look at his shadow forms. Legions can only be targeted by a race. So this is the one that I've seen the most, and that is pick a unit. Or no, it's an aura. Sorry. All units within 6 inches of him can only be targeted by ranged attacks if they're within 18 inches of that unit. So it's kind of like a worse. What's the word I'm looking for? Lone operative, right? An 18-inch range lone operative instead of a 12. Or if the enemy unit is below starting strength within 6, you can force a battle shock strength, blah, 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 blah. So and again, no, I haven't hired any artists for my Twitch channel. Thank you for asking. Shadow Lord Aura Psychic. While a friendly Legion Demonica unit is within 6 inches of this model, you can reroll Battle Shock and Leadership tests. And again, Wreathed in Shadows is the one that I see the most often used, especially because obviously shooting can be very detrimental. This makes it very hard for things like our Dark Lances to tag stuff. And it's brutal, okay? It's really brutal. He doesn't have damage or anything like that, so you're just relying on the swingy 4-up invuln. He does have 18 wounds, so he is going to be, kind of hard to take down unless your opponent has bad dice and or you have really good dice. But I will say he has 350 points, okay? So he's over 10% of your opponent's army. We're really looking at almost a fifth, right? Because 400 points would be a fifth. So we're looking at about 15 to 18% of your opponent's army in one model. Now let's look at a couple of the other. Sure, I'm open to suggestions. Go right ahead. We're going to look at a couple of the greater demons, and then there's a couple of units that I've seen that I will tell everybody to be on the lookout for, because to me, those were the ones that were just like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. And let's see. Probably be easier if I just searched him, huh? Let's go to the Lord of Change. Now, I haven't really gotten to see him on the table a lot. Gave 40k another try a couple days ago. It made me appreciate OSM more. It was miserable. So what I will say about 40k right now is that it is in a better state than it was. Most of my local play group still plays 40k, so a lot of like my get together, drink a couple beers on Fridays interactions are still a lot of 40k. So I still play a bit more 40k than I don't want to say than I want to, but more than I have been. just because it's more important to me to get out and connect with the buddies and stuff like that. Thinking to create a logo banner based on Phoenix. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So, and obviously doing the content creation kind of drives me to play a bit more 40k. I have been branching out into more games, but the 40k is what brings the viewers. So come for the 40k, stay for everything else, right? That's kind of where we're going with this. I haven't got to see the Lord of Change a ton. I assume that means he's not. Uh, yeah, just remind me before we get done, and I'll check it out. Bolt of Change, Witchfire, 18 inches, Strength 9, Neg 1 damage with 9 shots. So, like, not terrible. But the Supercharge does Neg 2 D3, so again, not great. It is Psychic, and his Rod of Sorcery is 8-1 D3. So, not terrible shooting. Strength 9 is weird. You know, it's kind of that multi-melta problem where, okay, it'll wound most infantry. And again, going into our army, we're talking about Drukhari. It's basically going to shit on everything we have. Like, oh, you've got anything? Cool. Haha. But the D3 damages is not the worst thing to have to deal with. 9 shots hitting on 2s does mean it's going to average about 7 to 8 hits. And then his melee is, if I assume you either take the sword. Nope, it's extra attacks. So he gets 3 swings at 7-2-3, 5 swings at 6-1-3. So the 3 damage is spicy, but the strength isn't too crazy. So again, he'd be a perfect candidate to send some Talos in my opinion. Here, chew on this, buddy. You know, how long can you make it in combat with these? Let's see what he does. While a friendly Tzeentch demon unit is within 6 inches, each time a model makes an add 1 to the strength characteristic of the attack. Ah! So that becomes interesting because now these are strength 10. Yeah, I was thinking that too. I honestly assumed that it was either you got the sword or the staff, but getting both seems a little weird, watching him get 8 swings. He does hit on 3s instead of 2s. And then strength 6 and 7 means he's going to kill a lot of infantry, but he's not necessarily going to do much into anything else. So I'm not, on paper, without seeing it on the table, I don't think he's too inherently terrifying in melee. I think he cleans up some Marines. I think he struggles into maybe like Custodes because they have a 2-up save and a 4-up invuln, you know. And from a kind of logic standpoint, I could get behind it. It is still a lot of attacks, but he will give himself his own +1 strength, which will make his attack strength 10, which makes his shooting a lot better because now we're wounding tanks on 4s. Not heavy tanks, but regular tanks like a Predator. And we're wounding a lot of transports on 3s. That makes a lot more sense. In your shooting phase, select one of the following abilities: ignore cover, lethal hits, and sustained hits. Until the end of the phase, this model's Bolt of Change has that ability. So which one's the Bolt of Change? That's probably, yeah. So again, very solid. How many points is he? 260. I'd like to see him on the table. T10. He does only have the 4-up invuln. He doesn't have the crazy Tzeentch 3-up invuln that they used to have. So again, that could be arguably why I haven't seen a ton of him. There's probably just better options for those points. I have seen some of these on the table. Ranged attacks, Living Whip, 612. And then the Phantasmagoria, which was one of the spells that they used to have. You either get 6 shots at 621 or 9 shots at 621, devastating wounds, hazardous psychic. 9 shot. Oh, you just get more shots. So again, solid anti-infantry shooting. The melee on these is pretty solid. Like I said, I have seen these on the table. These are not terrible. And again, just 4-up invulns, T10, 18 wounds. All the greater demons kind of sit in that same chassis now. The Ritual Knife gives you extra attacks. It's 3 of them at 622. The Snapping Claws are also extra attacks at 623. And then the Sword is 6 attacks at 823. War gear options. You can only take one of them. You can either take the whip, the knife, or the Aegis. What does the Aegis do? The Aegis still gives you the 5-up Feel No Pain ability, so I still think the Aegis is like the clear-cut winner. There's no reason not to take it. Having a 4-up Invuln and a 5-up Feel No Pain on an 18-wound model is very good. And I know this is like, how do we play against this with Drukhari? But in order to understand how to play against it, we have to understand what it is they do. So if I'm playing against Keepers of Secrets and I know that it's just going to be 3 models with 18 wounds and a 4-up Invuln and a 5-up Feel No Pain, I know what I'm in for, right? Like, okay, it's going to kind of suck. They are, again, T10. The chassis is pretty much the same. And then these are 330 points, which again seems fairly reasonable for what you're getting out of it. You know, you look at the price of some of the bigger tanks and stuff in the game that have a lot of damage output. And, you know, this is right in line with that. And it's almost the same cost as Be'lakor, actually, or Brokakor, as he was just referred to as. So it's one of those where, again, 3 of these is almost half your army. So if your opponent has 3 of them, you're going to have to just accept that maybe you're not killing anything, and you're going to have to try to play points. And then this one was always my favorite aesthetically, and that's the Bloodthirster. I love the way a well-painted Bloodthirster looks on the table, man. They just, something about them is just gorgeous to look at. He's T11, 4-up Invuln, 4-up save. Ranged weapons, Blood Flail. Let's actually look at his war gear options real quick. He can replace with 1 axe of, so his great axe of corn can be replaced with 1 axe of corn and either the Blood Flail or the lash of corn. Puppy, can you calm down? There's nothing out there, I promise. Minnie, it's okay. It's okay. So if you, let's take a look at the 2 axes first before we say, hey, this is what I would, hey, come here, come here, come here. She's going crazy. Come here. Oh, gosh. All right. So if you take the axe, you either get 8 attacks at 14 neg 4 d6 damage or 16 attacks at 821. And then if you take the great axe, you get 7 attacks at 16 neg 4 d6 plus 2, or you double it for 1022. Man, that's actually going to be a tough call. What do the ranged weapons do? The Blood Flail is a single shot at 16 neg 3 d6 plus 1. It hits on 2s. It'll wound on 2s for most things, maybe 3s. And then the Hellfire Breath is basically just a heavy flamer. I think, whew, man, that's a tough call. Like, these are all pretty good. What's the lash do? Because you should just get the Hellfire Breath. War gear options. War gear abilities. Nope. How long do you stream generally? Most of my streams take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. Just depends on how deep we get into things. And then on Thursdays, we do live games. So this Thursday will be a 40k game. It'll be starting at 9:30 Central. And then those usually take about 3 hours. And if you don't know, Central is Chicago time. Let's see. Lash, Hellfire Breath. What are we looking at here? War gear options. I don't see a Blood Flail. Am I like... Oh, it's right here. Stupid ass. And there's the lash. Reading is hard. English is my first language, and it's still really damn difficult. All right, so... yeah, it's one of those, like, that's a really tough call. Do you just want all the bonk, or do you want to get some of the ranged in there too? I personally think having that one single shot, even though it's only 12 inches, is probably still worth taking. Simply so that he's interacting in multiple phases and not just a one-dimensional monkey. But the Great Axe, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I don't think you're wrong for taking it. I don't see a reason to take the Lash. 6 shots at 802. I'd rather have either I'd rather either just take the great axe or the one single shot that's just like haha pick up your tank, right? Like that's kind of where I would go with it. So that being said, he is also 320 points. So what we're looking at is if somebody were to run all greater demons, we're looking at about 300 points per greater demon on average. Oh, we're missing one. $250. This is T12 with 20 wounds, but I will say these don't really they don't do a ton legitimately. I've played against them. They are not super scary. They just don't go anywhere. And we have a colloquial name for the Great Unclean One. Nice, do it, Lurk, do it. We have a colloquial name for the Great Unclean One, and that is Missy Smelliot. So if you ever hear me refer to Missy Smelliot, it is this model. Melee weapons, Bioblade, Biosword, right? Like they're not crazy. They're solid, but again, um, they don't necessarily do a lot. They'll tank an objective. They'll sit on the table for a long time. They do have a what was it? A 6-inch aura of 6-up feel no pain, which it should also have that keyword. Demon Nurgle. Yep, because it's a Legion's Demonica Nurgle. It has all those keywords. So it'll have a 6-up feel no pain. I believe there's a way to get it better. I'm not going to tell you there is, but I want to say there's probably an enhancement for it that would make sense. And you can subtract 1 from the toughness characteristic of models in a unit within 12 of it at the end of your movement phase. So again, if we're looking at effectively all greater demons, we're looking at about 6 models total. Almost like a knight's army, right? Because we're going to assume that they're on the average 300 points each. What that means is if it's all greater demons, we're going to win the table presence game. We might not win any other portion of the game, and that's okay. Because losing one of those models is a lot more detrimental than you losing a unit, right? But I don't think I've seen an all greater demons list. I have seen a lot of things, but it has not been that. The one thing I will tell you, if I were playing demons, these are going on the table. These things are basically cancer incarnate. Each time this unit ends a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range of this unit and roll a d6 for each model in this unit. For each 4-up, that enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. Okay? You could take 6 of them for 240 points. There is a character you can drop in there, and then because this just says for each model in this unit, not for each blood crusher in this unit, the characters will also add to it. So if you've got 7 models, you're going to average 3.5 successes, which means either 3 or 4. But that means you're either doing 3 D3 mortals or 4 D3 mortals every time they charge, as long as there's 7 models in there, which becomes anywhere from 6 to 8 mortal wounds on average just for charging. You will clear whole squads with that if your dice are hot. And again, this is, to me, I'm going to kind of get on my rant box a little bit. This is not a healthy 40k interaction. I don't like it at all. If it were 1 mortal wound for every model in the unit, I could get behind it, but having it do a D3 is a little silly, especially considering the way demons interact. If they come out of Deep Strike, right, because these can Deep Strike, if they come out of Deep Strike and they're in their shadow of the warp, it's what, a 6-inch charge, I think it is. So it's one of those where you have to know where these are at all the time, because they can charge literally anything. So imagine you've got a vehicle, like a dreadnought even, and then they just charge your dreadnought. Spicy dice, you pick up your dreadnought in the charge phase before you even get to interact with it, before they even have to fight it. So again, it is not a good 40k interaction. This has, and what I'm about to say is going to sound like I'm shitting on a game, but I'm really not. This feels like a Sigmar interaction that was crammed into 40k. And in Sigmar, a lot more things do this. And your units are a little bit bigger, and ward saves, which are feel no pains, are a little bit more prevalent, so it's not as destructive. So it's like the game is balanced around this type of interaction, whereas in 40k, it's not balanced around this. So it's like, sure, man, I played against this one time. Dude had spicy dice, rolled 7-4 ups, and literally did 21 mortal wounds to my unit on the charge. And I was just like, yeah, that's so glad that that is in this game. But being able to do reliable damage out of phase or out of sequence is better than not being able to do damage out of phase or out of sequence. So to me, this is something that should be brought in a lot of lists. I don't know if it is or not. And to be fair, I haven't dug through the whole codex yet or index. So there might just be better things for the points. But these also move 10. The Hellblades are 2 attacks each at 5-2-2. And then they get 4 extra attacks with Lance at 6-1-1. Sure, they only hit on 4s. But it's still, again, if we have a unit of 6 of them, 24 attacks. Hitting on 4s, +1 to wound, strength 6. Like, these things are very good for their points. I don't think they really have much options we need to worry about. So, and then the character is, let's see if we can find that handsome bastard. The Rendmaster? No, he's the Chariot. It's not Scarbrand, though we might take a look at Scarbrand anyway, just because he's funny. It's not Skull Taker. There's a character, I can't think of what he's called. There's a character Blood Crusher. What is he? You're the toughest, Minnie. The toughest. Is it the Bloodmaster? No, it is not him. Bloodthirster. Fate Skimmer. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I'm crazy. Leader. These aren't leaders. Oh, it is Skullmaster. There we go. I walked right or scrolled right by it. Okay, so what does he do, right? This model is leading a unit. Each time that unit ends a charge move, he gives everything devastating wounds. So we're looking at, again, if it's a full unit, we've got 18 attacks with dev or just the horns. So 24 attacks have dev wounds. And then each time this model's unit ends a charge move, each enemy unit within engagement range must make a battle shock test. So this one's okay, but the Skullmaster's Fury is pretty solid. 24 attacks with dev wounds, even hitting on 4s means you're going to get 12 hits, which means you're going to average 2 dev wounds. And then he goes into Blood Crushers. And then he counts as one of the models that you roll dice for. So again, to me, yes, it's kind of an expensive unit at 300 points, 345 points, but they're also 6 wounds with a 4-up invuln at T7. They're effectively like Squig Hog boys at that point. You've got a high toughness, high wound count. They don't have the feel no pain, but they have a much better invuln. And double the wounds. So these are definitely, to me, worth their points. There's no reason to not take them. Again, I don't know if that's what people are taking, but it makes sense. Scarbrand moves 8. He doesn't fly, but fly doesn't really do anything right now. And then he gets 2d6 attacks at strength 5, no rend, auto hits. And then what does he do? He's got his axe. Oh my gosh. 8 attacks at 16, 4, 6 or double that at 812. Good gravy. And then while add 1 to the attacks characteristics of melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. So he gives Khorne units +1 attack, which means he also gets +1 attack. And then while a unit is within 6 inches of him, you have to make a leadership test before you can fall back. Which, sure, I mean, that's not too far out of line with what he used to do. But again, what's his point? 345, pretty solid. He's not as mobile as a regular Bloodthirster, only moving 8 instead of the 10 or 12 that the regular one did. But he's also 4 up in invuln, 20 wounds. He's OC 5, and just the sheer volume of damage output, right? Does Shalaxi do anything crazy? Let's look. Ranged attacks. She's got the Lash, 612, Pavane, D6 Dev Wound, Psychic at 9-1 D3, or D6 at 9-2 D3 with sustained hits 3. I mean, it's funny, but it's not like crazy. And then in melee, 10 attacks total. So again, nothing. I mean, these having precision is pretty cool. That could be pretty brutal at strength 14, neg 3, d6 +2. But overall, like I said, overall, she doesn't look crazy. At the end of the fight phase, select 1 enemy unit engagement range until subtract 1 from the attacks. That's gross. Dropping until the end of the fight phase, subtract 1 from attacks characteristics of melee weapons equipped by that unit. That's rough. That could be really brutal. And then each time this model declares a charge that targets a monster vehicle or character unit, you can reroll the charge roll. And then when you make an attack that targets a monster vehicle character, you can reroll the hit, wound, and the damage. So yeah, she's still pretty damn good as well. But she's also 450 points. So again, I think if I had to guess, based on, again, my limited experience and what I'm seeing just through a quick cursory glance through this, you're probably seeing Be'lakor and then maybe 1 to 2 other greater demons, and then maybe some plague bearers, or some blood like smaller objective grabbers like demonettes, plague bearers, stuff like that. Beasts of Nurgle, I think, have been a staple just from my conversations with friends that I have that do play demons. If you have not seen what they do, let's take a look. They are T9. They are 7 wounds. At the end of each phase, if a model in this unit has lost any wounds but is not destroyed, it regains all of its lost wounds. Man, these things are a pain in the ass. Like, again, they don't necessarily do a ton. They get 6 attacks that hit on 4s. And into the right unit, like they'll do some damage, but for the most part, they don't do much. But when you're doing your attacks, you have to sit and think about, do I even waste the time rolling dice into this? They do have a 5-up invuln, but I want to say like the plague bearers are pretty good. Because they are, 2 wounds at T5, and their melee got pretty solid. Hitting on 3s at neg 1 with 2 attacks and lethal hits. And then if you control an objective marker at the end of your command phase and this unit is within range of it, so they have sticky objectives. So that's pretty good. And then they are 125 for 10. So 12.5 points a model. So yeah, these are pretty solid, just a tank. And then if they're within, 6 inches, I think it was, of the Great Unclean One, they'll have a Feel No Pain to go with their 2 wounds and T5. So again, what we're looking at is probably a handful of greater demons, and then Beasts of Nurgle, some Blood Crushers maybe, and then like Demonettes, stuff like that. Just smaller units to go and score points and do objectives. So we've kind of dug through this before we dig or jump over to the board. Let's see. Let's jump out of here. Let's look at their beep. Right. Corrupt real space. You have no models if you're into your. While an objective marker is corrupted and under your control, the area of the battlefield within 6 inches of that objective marker is considered within your army's shadow of chaos. Draft of Terror, 1 legions. You can improve the AP characteristic of weapons equipped by this model by 1. Each time such a weapon targets a unit that is battle shocked, you can also reroll the wound roll. So that's pretty solid right there. Increasing your AP is pretty good, and then being able to reroll wounds is very good. Until the end of the phase, you can advance a charge with 1 unit, and then you can do a 3-inch deep strike, but then you cannot charge. But this is more for like flamers and things like that, or just like sneaking a unit onto an objective type of thing. Realm of Chaos, targeted units on the battlefield, and then place them into strategic reserves. They will revive using the deep strike ability. And so this was already, like, I think this was part of the World Championships FAQ anyway, is that if you get put into strategic reserves, but you have the deep strike ability, you can just use either, if I remember right. That should be, I want to say that was in the World Championships FAQ. And then you cannot target a unit that, okay, bam. You can reroll invuln saving throws of 1. So that one I know gets used a lot. Like, I've seen that one get used a lot. So, and then I just want to double check their enhancements. The Endless Gift. Yes, so here it is for the Great Unclean One. The bearer has a Feel No Pain 5 ability. While it's within your Shadow of Chaos, it has a Feel No Pain 4 ability. And this is where those Great Unclean Ones, like I said, like that one with this enhancement just gets exhausting. And then the Everstave is the Zinch one. Whoa, add 2 to the strength characteristic of the bearer range weapons. Wait a second. Add 1 to the strength characteristic of ranged weapons and increase the range characteristics of weapons by 3. While it's in shadow, you add 2 and 6 instead. So again, you could actually end up going to strength 12 for those guns, those shooting attacks from the Zinch, Lord of Change. So again, the Everstave probably makes that thing pretty rough to deal with, honestly. That would be my assumption, is that Everstave could make those things pretty brutal. And then Corn, you just get more bonk. And then the Soul Stealer, you regain wounds when you destroy a model. So, yep, okay. So we've kind of dug through them a little bit. We're going to close this out. Look at all my BlueStacks app players. This is just ads. I don't play games on my BlueStacks. Not that it matters. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a table. We're going to, and if you're new to the channel, you're going to know what's happening here. We're going to drop our deployment zones first. And we know that this one's right around here. And we're going to hammer and anvil it today, or hamburger style, as some of our local homies call it. And I love it. And then we're going to blop. It's, I think, right around here. Right around here. Right around here. Actually, I think these are further back. I think these are more like this. Could be wrong. Not the end of the world. But this gets the point across, right? So let's go here, here. All right, so we already know how this game's going to go in some ways. Because we know our demon player needs to control 2 objectives, right? In order to get their Shadow of the Chaos. We are going to be slow playing. And you're going to, if you were here for the orc video, you're going to hear some things that you've already heard before. Because some of the ways we approach these different armies doesn't change. We have to really rethink the way we approach the game. You know, in 9th edition as a Drukhari player, we could really hammer that gas and just keep the pressure, keep the pressure, keep the pressure. And sure, we might get tabled, but because we were able to apply so much pressure, we'll be able to ramp points, right? And that's actually how orc players are right now. A lot of them, ramp points early, apply pressure early, prevent your opponent from scoring by ramping and applying pressure, and then just hope that you scored enough that when they finally break through that line, they're not just decimating you. So, again, we're going to be talking about this based on the way I play. I will try to kind of throw some thoughts out there based on the way I think a lot of you guys that are watching play, because I know a lot of you are like, hey, Dark Lance, Dark Lance, Dark Lance. And again, not that it's wrong. I think that's a great plan. I've just gotten to the point where I bring a lot more haywire, and I just accept that if I play against demons at a tournament or I play against nids at a tournament, it's just going to be a harder matchup for me. But when I play against Marines with tanks, or I play against Knights, or I play against Guard, I'm just like, cool, pick it up because I'm not dealing with it, right? So it's just one of those where I've just kind of adjusted what I bring and just said, you know what? If I hit these monster heavy lists, so be it. Uh, hope I can roll sixes that game, right? So what I'm probably doing is I'm probably putting some Kabalites here. And I'm honestly probably not putting a ton in Deep Strike this game. I think they have like one unit with indirect. Let's actually double check that real quick. Pretty sure they do. Is this the 10th ed or the 9th ed? 9th ed, trash. Data sheets. This should be 10th ed, right? And I'm not on here. I'm definitely not on here. What is the... It's the corn cannon. I'm trying to remember what it's called. If you're out there and you're on chat and you remember what it's called, let me know. Bloodmaster, Contorted Epitome. Salt the Flamer, Great and Clean One. Because if they have any indirect, that's going to be the only one. Lord of Change is definitely not it. Renmaster, nope, nope, nope. Skull Master, Skull Taker, Sloppity Bile Piper. Oh, it's probably over here. So, Skull Cannon. Let's check that one, and let's check the Soul Grinder, because those would be the only two units that would have indirect. So let's check them. And I haven't seen a Soul Grinder on the table, so I don't know if they're just bad, or it's just because the little bit of Demons interactions I've had. Yep, that's it, buddy. Welcome to the stream. Big shout out to Proxy Hammer. Does some great Eldar and Craft World videos, so if you haven't checked him out, make sure you do. Feel free to drop a link to your channel in the chat there, buddy. So the Phlegm Bombardment does have indirect. It's 36 inches, strength 7. Again, I haven't seen one on the table. I don't know if it's because they're bad or if it's just because my limited interaction into demons. If they have one, good chance I probably put some stuff in Deep Strike that I want to protect. If they don't have one, does the Skull Cannon have it? No. So it's just this handsome fella. Ayo! So again, I haven't seen the Soul Grinder on the table a single time, but again, very limited interaction in the Demons so far this edition. The only real heavy Demons players we had have either gotten out of 40k or just moved away. So I haven't had that interaction. So if we assume they don't have a Soul Grinder with indirect, I'm gonna load the line with Kabalites. Maybe even out here, because again, most demon shooting is pretty limited. You want to throw your shots at me, that's fine. Like with your great unclean ones or whatever. But when you charge me, I want you charging Kabalites. I don't want you charging my more important things. If they've got some infantry or something like Nurglings can infiltrate, right? So I might consider some witches, maybe a little further up than that. We might put the witches up on one of these lines, depending. But what I would probably do is pick this one right here. Bro, why did my daughter convince me to buy the Leviathan box when I'm still built? uh, Man, I wish I had an answer for that. Also, big shout out to Spicy Miso Gaming, a gentleman named Glenn. He's also a Marine veteran. Met him was at Gen Con, I believe, Kill Team. Super great guy. Also does Twitch streaming. So again, Glenn, feel free to drop your Twitch link in there. Appreciate you jumping in. I wish I had an answer for that. My daughter is on this AOS hype train, and that's what we're doing right now. So I may leave this area right here kind of open and try to deploy there last, leaving myself some options. Like maybe I'll put witches there or my raider with the incubi, something like that. Just so if they do have Nurglings around here, I know Nurglings can't control objectives, but if they do have them, I can just go over there and tag them, and we can get rid of those things early. Because believe it or not, Nurglings can be a pain in the ass. Like they can just be a nuisance because of their, I think it's a 6-inch -1 to strength ability, or it's -1 to hit. I can't remember. Let's find out. Nurglings, Wahapedia. Is this 10th or is this 9th? It's 10th. Subtract 1 from the hit roll, but it's for melee. Seekers are really fast and hard hitting. Yeah, and they always have been pretty solid and fast. Seekers, Wahapedia. No, that's 9th. There we go. Yeah, they move 14. 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, but they are lethal, and then slashing claws are 3 attacks. So yeah, it's a good volume is the main thing. And they can reroll advance and charge rolls made for this unit, and they can advance and charge for 1 CP is the main thing to remember if you're playing against Seekers. So they have a 15 to 20-inch movement with the ability to reroll that advance roll and then reroll that charge roll. So again, that's why hell yeah, good job. Appreciate you, Glenn. That's why we put these what's the word I'm looking for here? Kabalites. Just your regular splinter rifle Kabalites up front. It sucks to lose them, but if you're going to lose something, that's what you want to lose. And then the Seekers, I don't know if they still are, but they used to be actually kind of durable. T4, 2 wounds, 5 up save, so not crazy. I want to say the Seekers actually were, a bit more durable in 9th edition. Maybe it was 8th. Like maybe they had a feel no. Oh, those you could give them the spell that gave them the feel no pain. That's what it was. So again, doing that. If we assume there's no soul grinder, I'm gonna save we discussing dropping warheads on foreheads or pushing through the kill zone. Not yet. We're actually discussing if we were to play against demons with our Drukhari, how would we approach that game? So right now we're in the planning phase, and then we'll be talking about warheads on foreheads, buddy. If we're doing double Dark Lance Scourges, like if we have 2 to 3 units, they used to have. Yeah, that was their 9th ed stuff. I forgot that they had the varied invulns in 9th ed, right? And it wasn't even an invuln; it was a demon save, because Codex creep is real. So if you're running 8 to 12 Scourges and they all have Dark Lances, then really all of them should probably be on the table. There's no reason for them not to be. Because with 36-inch range, you want them to lock down the few shooting lanes that they can. I might deploy them here, again, depending on what kind of shooting. Who do Drukhari have versus infiltrators, if any? So We have one unit with infiltrate, and that's mandrakes. But a lot of times, like, I only take one unit of mandrakes. I know a lot of players might take two or three, and usually I just use my Kabalites and my like my witches as my anti-infiltrators. With the witches being able to advance and charge, and then being able to hide them in terrain features. If they've got charging infiltrators, if you want to tag my witches, feel free. Of course, there's always catches, like if it's a big ass vehicle, you don't want them tagging your witches because that's no good for you. I find hellions are pretty good to kind of deal with infiltrators, but that's why like Nurglings have infiltrate, so you may want to put a unit of hellions or witches up so that they can move. If they need to, they can advance, they can charge, they can get into melee with those Nurglings, etc. So if you put a unit of Scourges here, you can lock down this, you can lock down this, right? You don't have to. You could put one here so that you can bounce out, lock down, bounce back. And the same with the other side. You could put it here, lock down, bounce back. And it just depends. You're going to have to play this by ear, because if they put their greater demons out on these wings, that's probably going to be where you want to put your Scourges. But what I would probably do is I'd probably just load up one side. So if your opponent, for whatever reason, decides they're just going to put Be'lakor here, they're just like, man, I'm going to stack the line, and if I go first, awesome. If not, we'll see what happens. Jesus is taking the wheel, right? When I see them at my club, Drukhari always rocking boat spam with those jet bikes that carry 5 men. Once in a blue moon, I see the giant Forge World barge. So Venoms are very good. That's what you're talking about. And a lot of people are playing Kabalites and boats, right? The Venoms, the little boats. And we'll touch on that in just a minute there, tiniest of travelers. We'll kind of circle back to that. That is still kind of like what's good. I just kind of deviate from that a little bit because of the way I play the game. I tend to still have a very melee bent, so I still want to bring witches, or I still want to bring incubi. I still want to interact in these specific phases. I don't bring Ravagers, which I know are kind of the hotness because they throw 3 Dark Lances and they reroll hit rolls of 1 against things that are starting strength. It's just, for me and the way I play, that is just not what I like bringing. I do like the Tantalus. That is the Forge World Barge. It is very funny. Very funny. I'm just looking something up real quick about the Ravager. It used to, I don't know if it still does, but it used to have the Kabalite keyword. It does. It does. Okay, cool, cool. I know in 10th edition you're doing it because you love them, and I respect it. That's fair. I do love them. I do love them. I got into them late 8th, early ninth. I've always been an Orc player, and the ninth edition Orc Codex came out, and not that it was good or bad from a competitive standpoint. I just didn't like it. And even the 10th ed index, not that it's good or bad, I just don't like it. There's almost like no flavor. It's very vanilla. I'm just playing like rules as written 40k. It's very boring and bland, and it's just not fun for me. Whereas I've always had a lot of fun with Drukhari since I picked them up. And witches and racks are what got me into it, and and racks are what keep me playing them. So yeah, I'll still bring the Kabalites. They're like, from a competitive sense, Kabalites are too good not to bring. No, no, no. I am with you, man. It is a struggle, and it is one that I am very familiar with. But I'm just saying, like, it is like Kabalites from a competitive standpoint for Drukhari are too good not to bring. I actually did a whole tier list on the units, but I had to grade them within the vacuum of the Drukhari index. So, but that being said, if your opponent's just like, here's a greater demon, and if I win the roll off, awesome. If I don't, awesome. Like, we're just going to let Jesus take the wheel. I'm probably stacking almost all my Scourges over here because they're fast enough that I can get them over here if I need to be within 1 to 2 turns. I don't necessarily have to worry about them being here. And the reason I'm doing that is I can focus fire now, right? I can fire, if I've got 3 units, I could put 12 Dark Lance shots if that's what you're taking here. I can burn those tokens. I can also plan to put a Chronos here if I need to. And then if I burn 3 tokens, I'm getting 1.5 back on average, right? Which means I'm only burning 2 or 1. And then hitting on 4s with 12 shots. Yeah, because it's 4, 8, 12. You're going to get 6, and then you're going to get 3, so you're going to get 9 total hits. And at strength 12, you're going to wound most greater demons on 3s. Which means you're going to put 6 saves on those greater demons on average, which means they're going to fail 3 on average. And you're going to average 5 damage to 6 damage per die. And then if you need to, you've got those CP rerolls in there if you need to, like if you rolled a poor die. But that means those Scourges could effectively kill 1 greater demon. And that's assuming averages. Obviously, we all know it's a dice game. You can plan for averages, but once dice hit the table, and it's like this expression that they have in the military. You know, what is it like? I'm trying to remember what it was. It's like all plans go to shit once you make contact with the enemy. You know, same thing. All plans go to shit once you roll dice. Yes. If they're playing a lot of Plague Bearers, totally agree. If we're looking at a lot of no, I appreciate you, James, coming in. And if they're playing, and what we're really talking about is like if they're playing a lot of greater demons, that seems to be the big struggle. And the main thing is, like, we as Drukhari players just have to accept that that is just our struggle. But here's what we could do to kind of mitigate that struggle. So again, if I can throw 12 Dark Lances here and kill it, awesome. And even if I have a Ravager, like, there's nothing wrong with putting 15 Dark Lances on this side of the board if that's where they put their Greater Demon. If I win the roll-off and I can make you pick up a Greater Demon, that's 300 points of your army, roughly, that you're not going to get to interact with, and that's 1 less Greater Demon I have to worry about. Same with if it's down here. And the other thing is, like, if they put it back here or back here to protect it, that's 1 extra turn you're going to have of them having to move it around to get up here, through and around to get up here. Like, they are going to protect it, but they're not going to get it into the game until probably turn 2 or 3 then. And you can kind of plan around that as well. So if we know that, we can still stack the board. But if they're back here, we're actually a lot more free to maybe balance our deployments with Dark Lances here, Dark Lances here. If you're kind of an idiot like me, right? And you're just like, hey man, if I hit demons or nids, it's just going to be a rough matchup. I'm loading up on Haywire. Again, nothing wrong with it. It's just going to be a much different game. Because what we need to do now is we need to play even more cagey than before, and we need to play a lot of traps. So what I would probably do is I would, again, if we've got cab lights here so I can run up and tag this objective, then we're going to do it. But I'm only planning on tagging 1 objective my first turn. I am not trying to hit 2. I am not trying to hit 3. Are they going to get their Shadow of the Warp turn 2? Sure are. Is there anything I'm going to be able to do about it? Nope. And that's it, man, is you understand that this is the game you're playing, and you play it to the best of your ability. So what I would do then is say, okay, if this is the objective that I want, and I need this one, because I don't want them having the shadow in my deployment zone, I might put my mandrakes up here, depending on how terrain's set, or right here. And actually, this is arguably the better objective for me to take, because I don't have to be in the terrain to control it. I can be here. So I could put mandrakes here, I could put cabalites here, and honestly what I'll probably do is my mandrakes, I'll just spread them out real wide so that if they do go first, they can't advance all the way through them and get into my lines. They'll have to go into them, or they'll have to go this way, right? And Obviously, if they have Nurglings, which most Demon players will, you're going to need to put your Mandrakes down first or second, but you don't want to let your opponent screen them out with multiple units of Nurglings. And what I mean by that is if they put their Nurglings here and they have 2 or 3 units of them, let's get rid of all these X's. It's a duck rave. That is a duck rave. I don't know if that's just a rave. I mean, I dig it. Them some cute ass ducks. Uh, but what you don't want, right, is if they have 3 units of Nurglings, you don't want them putting them here all spread out, putting them here all spread out, and you still haven't put your Mandrakes down, and then they put them here all spread out, and now you're shoehorned into putting your Mandrakes wherever they want you to put them. So if they drop their Nurglings first, you need to drop your Mandrakes second. If they don't drop their Nurglings first, you need to drop your Mandrakes first. And you need to, if you're playing 1 unit of Mandrakes, you just need to accept that they're dead turn 1. And then if they don't die turn 1, awesome. Right, you go into that first turn. And what I would probably do is, again, I would probably spread them out as wide as I can, even if it's in the middle of the board, to either get them to charge into them or decide to go around them, depending on what it is. Because if they've got the Seekers, like Proxy Hammer mentioned, like Seekers do hit hard, if you can get those Seekers here, but you can countercharge with a unit of Witches or a unit of Incubi, or you can tag them with just a lot of volume, because Splinter Rifles will wound them, I think, on 5s. Splinter Rifle strength 2 or 3. I think they're 3. I don't know. I'm used to it's either 3s or 6s. Like, that is the interaction I have with Splinter Rifles. I don't even look at the strength anymore. Splinter Rifles. Strength 2. So 6s. But just through volume, right? And then the Shredders, like if you've got the other squad, the Shredders will actually do a lot of work into the Seekers because it's a D6 auto hits at strength 6. You know, you can really decimate that squad. You can peel it. What you want to do is you want one objective, and then you want one objective that your opponent takes, whichever one, and you want to try to be able to hold one objective and then fight over the other one. And I know that sounds, it's very easy to say, but it's not always easy to do. And this is where units like Racks and stuff like that come in. Because if you can advance Racks, most things, if it's a big 10-man blob with a homunculus, most things aren't going to one-shot your Racks. Even a 5-man with a homunculus, the only way they're one-shotting them is if it's a massive unit like Plague Bearers, or, you know, like a big unit, or like a Bloodthirster who just gets a million attacks. But the ability, if you need to -1 to wound them, and just be like, cool, your Plague Bearers are strength, what are they, strength 5? Or are they 4? Plague Bearers are strength 4, so you could actually push them to wounding you on 5s. Sure, they have lethal hits, but they only have 2 attacks each. So 20 attacks that hit on 3s means that you're only going to get on average 3 lethal hits, right? You're going to fail 6, so 14 are going to go through with 2 to 3 of them being lethal, which means 12, and then you're only going to get 6 wounds out of that, plus the 3 lethal is 9. You're going to make one of those saves on average is 8, and then you're going to make 2 of those feel no pains on average, which is 6. So you're going to lose 6 racks on average. And that's if you don't -1 to woo them, and that's assuming they don't have a homunculus. If they do, then you're actually only losing like 3 or 4 of those racks on average. So it's one of those like, and then your return swings are going to be 3s and 4s. And you're going to have 2 attacks each. You're going to get to reroll hits. So you're going to have more efficient dice going into them than they have going into you. I do occasionally use Tabletop Simulator. I'm not a big fan of it for 40k, but I will play it, and I'm more than willing to play with people. Time is the biggest thing for me. Being that I work remotely and then like having kids and stuff. Hey, thanks for watching, man. It is body torture time. Mine, I already did mine. 3 miles and then I busted out the kettlebell trying to maintain my old man body, dude. But good luck on the workout, man. Thanks for joining. But yeah, I do take TTS for some games. Typically, my only free time for TTS is like during the day, like right now, for example, or every other Sunday in the mornings, and I'm Chicago time. So like a lot of times it's maybe like 8 to noon Chicago time in the morning. Yeah, and that's also fair, and it would probably be a lot more visually aesthetic. It's not a bad suggestion at all. Honestly, what this really is I started with like this John Madden-esque kind of markup because I used to do it on the stream games, and I still do it when I have people playing that aren't me. And it's just one of those where habits, right? Like I'm just kind of in my ways, but that is definitely a great suggestion for this type of video is to TTS, drop some actual models in. It is way more pleasing and does give people a better visual. Plus, I could just have multiple units on the table and keep moving them without having to clear out. So no, I will keep that in mind for the next time I do this. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. But yeah, you want racks maybe here. And then you want, like I said, like mandrakes here. What you want is you want to be able to hold one of these and potentially get your opponent to fight over the other one, but you don't want to spread out. Like if your opponent takes both, do not try to take both back. That will not do you any favors. What that will do is that will spread you thin, and then you're definitely going to lose that game, right? If you take this with mandrakes and you take this with racks, and then your opponent's like, here's seekers, here's plague bearers, go to hell, I'm taking your objectives, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take this one back and I'm going to take this one back. You've now given them 2 units to kill. Oh, yeah, sorry. Usually I try to give warnings. Thanks for the heads up. Bad break. Um, so what you've done, though, is you've given this unit and this unit to your opponent so that they can come in with something else and take them and something else and take them. What you want to do, and maybe we'll give it another minute. We got a minute. We got a minute for the ad break, so we'll wait. We'll wait for the Twitch viewers, and then we'll come back around to this. Let's go. While we're on the ad break, if you don't know, we're going to be running a Blood Bowl League. We'll stream some of those games as well. And while we're doing that, I will also be doing like a Sports Center style show to kind of keep people updated on that. I'm a big fan of Blood Bowl. Been playing that since 2nd edition, 2001. Love the game. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't played it, I suggest checking it out. It does have really good TTS support, so just some things to keep in mind. And they're going to be coming back from their ads, so that's a nice little break there. And 4, 3, 2, 1, back from the ad. So yeah, you don't want to give them 2 units here to just come back in and take, come back in and take, because now you're not trading well. If you're doing 2 for 2, you're not trading well. So if you take this one and you take this one and then they end up taking both, you need to pick one of them and say, that is mine. You can have the rest of them for now. Yep, you can have the rest of them for now, but we're going to focus on one. And this is always how I've played Drukhari, is I'm like, this is my half of the board right here. You can have all this, I don't care, but this one's mine. So if they take this and they take this, you've got to look at the table setup. You've got to look at the positioning. You've got to see where their big demons are. You've got to see where their hard-hitting units are, and you have to plan accordingly. Let's say this is the one you want to take, right? You take it with 1 unit. If you can shoot it off, awesome. If you have to charge it, you soften it up with as much shooting as you can, and then you take it. You go, okay, you've got 10 plague bearers here. I'm going to throw splinter rifles here. I'm going to throw splinter cannons here. I've got my maybe like 2 venoms with a bunch of shit in the back. We're going to soften you up as much as we can. And then really what I'm going to do is I'm going to take literally the shittiest, cheapest unit I have, and I'm just going to march up here and grab it again. Last local Drukhari actually placed 3rd overall out of 16 tables. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. I think outside of one event where it was real early when the index just dropped, which I blanked, but I was doing a lot of weird shit that event. But that was like before the Overwatch and before the points drops and everything. I blanked that one. But since then, I did a 5 round event and went 4-1 and ended up in 3rd, I think it was. I won an RTT. I've done pretty well with them after that. It just took some like planning and like just getting a lot of games in. Yeah, and that's what I did early. We'll come back around to fixed objectives in a minute. I've got some thoughts on those as well. Because he hits somebody who's pretty good, and that goes downhill real quick, depending on what he's playing against. I assume he's probably doing something along the lines of cleanse and maybe homers or deploy teleport homers and behind enemy lines, things like that. But yeah, so you just want to trade off on one objective at a time, and then if they give you one, take it. I play a lot of Talos. I know a lot of people are high on Dark Lances. I because of how I play the game and the way I look at the game, to me, Talos are like my bread and butter. Every list I have has 2 units of 2 right now for a lot of reasons. And usually I will put at least 1 unit in strategic reserves. I honestly don't know that I do that into Demons, simply because I just don't know that it gets me anything. The one thing I will say is running Talos into Greater Demons, you're with the way I run them, I'm fishing for 6s anyway, because I run Haywire, and having them be twin linked means I just get to fish for them. He hit people that will absolutely trash you. No offense. The club members are ranked 50th and under in the Ontario League, and 20 of these guys are all GT players. Super majors out of. I'm not offended, man. I'm I'm not offended at all. I mean, I'm not a bad player. Am ranked top 10 on ITC points as far as Drukhari players go, and I'm more than willing to play people. I think the main thing that separates me from a lot of what you would consider like top players is the fact that I don't just cookie cutter list everything. I play what I like, and I go and I have fun. And that's the main thing I think that holds me back from being what you would largely consider uh, a top tier player. And probably not as good as I was at this point last year also, just because 10th has kind of really pushed me out of playing as much 40k as I used to. And like I said, there's better players than me. I am not ashamed to admit that. All I try to do is bring a slightly different perspective to the game and try to encourage people to play what they like, and I just try to help them be better with the units that they like. Yeah. Yep. I assume it's a lot of Witch Cult, a lot of bikes, a lot of maybe even Hellions, but the Reavers, a lot of advance and charge, get into people's deployment zones, and just trying to score points that way, right? Like just get into the deployment zone for behind enemy lines, and hope you can stay on the table long enough to filter them in a couple units at a time and get those points. Like based on what you said, that's my assumption. I could be wrong, but. But yeah, like I said, I'm in no way offended. I know players that are better than me. That's okay. All right, so that's the game you want to play. And again, it's the same thing I've been telling everybody since we've been doing these Drukhari videos, right? Cut the board in half, play half the table at a time, and understand that your opponent's going to outscore you for the first couple of scoring turns, and you need to make those points up on turn 4 and 5, right? If you hold one objective and or two objectives, they are a double-edged sword for real. For real. You know, if you can hold 1 to 2 objectives, you can stay in the game, especially if you can score your secondaries. And then turn 4, if you've removed enough, now you can start spreading out. What I like to do is, again, and what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to focus on one demon at a time. With them having 4-up invulns, like when you play against Marines, do you actually know the demons list you are facing? I have no clue what I'll be facing when I play against demons. My demons, the demons game I have on deck, I've already played a couple, but the demons deck or game I have on deck for either this weekend or early next week, I don't know. I'd rather just be surprised anyway, because like if I go to a tournament, lists are locked until usually the day before or the day of. So I just kind of go, okay, what are we doing? I don't care. We'll figure it out as we go. Like I'm a very reactive. Yep, and really, like I said, my interaction into demons is pretty minimal. Most of the local demons players have either stopped playing 40k or moved away, or it's all soup. Like it's Marines and demons. Like the mono demons interactions, I just haven't had. I've had the Chaos Marines and demons interaction, but I haven't had the mono demons. But when we look at the greater demons, what you are going to have to do as a Drukhari player is you're going to have to pick one, and you're just going to have to say, that's going away. I'm going to do everything within my power to make that go away, even if it takes all the shooting in my army. Because what's going to happen is if you don't, you're not going to kill any of them, right? So if we've got a greater demon, again, it doesn't matter where it is, but if we've got one here and we can focus fire on it and we have other targets so we can split fire, like if we have a venom that can here, or even if the venom's like in here, it doesn't matter. But if we have infantry, you'll do fine. Bring action monkey units. Oh, and again, I don't play a ton of dark lances, but we will. The scourges are what you're talking about. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that in just a second too. The main thing is pick a demon, make it go away. That is what you're going to have to do. And it's the same with Nids. If you're playing against Nids and they've got the big stompy Nidzilla style list, you just need to pick one and make it go away. And again, for what a lot of people play, that means putting every Dark Lance you have into it until it's dead. It is much better to overcommit to killing one demon and making it go away than undercommitting to 3 demons, and now there's just 3 demons that took some damage and they're still running down your throat. That's what you're going to have to do. That's how you're going to have to approach it. The main thing to remember is if you have the Ravagers, they have the Cabal keyword, so they can reroll wound rolls against things that are under half strength. If they the Scourges do not have the Cabal keyword, so you'll have to keep that in mind. Your Venoms have the Cabal. No, the Venom. Ooh, do the Venoms have the Cabal keyword? That's a good question. I doubt they do. They used to get them. They may not anymore. That's the poopy duty. Yeah, they don't. So the Venoms, if you've got the units in the Venoms, they won't be able to reroll wounds. It'll only be the Cabalites. So really, that strat for rerolling wounds is only going to be really good for your Ravagers, unless you put your Cabalites on the table, which is a thing you can do. Because remember, you can fly a Venom up, you can disembark your units, you can shoot with the unit, and then you can hop them back in the Venom in the fight phase, because that's one of the rules that Venom has. So that is another thing to keep in mind, is in order to make your dice more efficient, you can disembark and then hop back in so that you can re-roll those wounds. The Scourges, as you said, yes, they're going to do most of the heavy lifting, and that is just the way it is. So now, we've kind of talked about how we can interact with them. I'm not going to dig into it because a lot of the strategies you're going to use are going to be the same. Just like when I talked about orcs, you're going to have to play half the table at the time. I'm a big proponent of Real cagey turn 1, turn 2, remove what you can, then commit turn 3. Yes, I am, man. I'm not, and to be fair, like I'm not big on 10th edition, but I still love 40k and I still love Drukhari. So you're not wrong. But yeah, so it's one of those overcommit, use your Dark Lances, use your Ravagers if you have them, use your strat support to remove demons one at a time, the big ones. Make sure if they've got smaller units, you're doing what you can to move block them. Like your Cabalites are going to be very good for that. When you split them in half in the Venom, you're going to move block. Don't charge, just move up and be like, cool, I'm a wall. Now you got to walk around me or charge me. And that's the main thing you got to do. You know, cut the board in half. I'm a big proponent of turn 1, turn 2 is setting up for turns 3, 4, and 5. So a lot of times going into turn 3, my opponent is just like ass blasting me. And then turn 3, 4, and 5 is when I start making up that score. And it's honestly, it's probably a dangerous way to play the game, but that's just how I play. Let's close out this real quick. And again, I'm not going to keep hammering this home because to me, your approach to demons and nids is going to be very similar to everything else. It's just remembering that you focus down one demon or bug at a time rather than spread your shots out. So now, I know a lot of people are like, hey, Dark Lances, Dark Lances, Dark Lances. I want to say the Drukhari was on slate for like summer. There was a timeline that was released, and I want to say that's when it was. So let's go here. Boop. Boop. We're going to talk about a few things here. Now, factions. And I'm not on here. Uh it's not all we have that's anti-tank. It's all we have that's anti-everything. And that's what we're getting ready to talk about. And again, we're going to talk about the shifts that I've had as a player. So, we're going to look at Ravagers. Yeah, that's right. Give us a hug. All them big bugs. Monsters are kind of a tough thing for Drukhari in general to work around just because we don't have much that interacts with them outside of Dark Lances. At least with vehicles, we have things that can just be like, no. So Ravagers at 115 points, I personally think they're overpointed. They went up. The reason they went up is because of Craft Worlds. So thank you, Craft Worlds, for giving us a side nerf. And I found it very hard to justify bringing them once they jumped. I think it was 20 points. If I remember right, they went from 95 to 115. They do reroll hit rolls of 1 against units that are at its starting strength, and they throw 3 Dark Lances. And 115 it's not that 115 is bad, right? Like it's still not the worst. It's just 20 points was excessive. But the reason they went up 20 points is because that's actually now run. That's actually a good call. And even obliterators are a pretty good side by side comparison for what you're getting out of them. Let's see. Factions. Tau, 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 tau. Reading's hard. There we go. Boop, 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 boop. I promise, guys, English is my first language too. Broadsides. And they are others. Now, the heavy rail rifle gets 2 shots at 12. It is neg 4 instead of neg 3. It's d6 plus 1 instead of 2, but it is also dev wounds. It is heavy, whereas the Ravager's Dark Lance is not heavy. So it's 2 shots instead of 3 shots, because they only have 1 heavy rail rifle, right? Because the Ravager gets 3 Dark Lances. But it's also got a 4-up invuln, if I remember right. It might not. It is T6 with, and again, why is this 8 wounds? That's the big thing. Like, why are these things so ridiculous each time? You can ignore, blah, blah, blah. Can they still get drones? That's the main thing. They do. one rail seeker with gotcha. Any number of models can be equipped with up to 2 of the following. Can take duplicates, so they can also just take. Each model can take 2 shield drones. They can go to 10 wounds. They can take a missile drone to get more shots. I love bright lancing a broadside and using a fate dice. So hits on two. Yes, it does hit on twos when guided, and you can make it so that they can ignore all their hit roll mods, so they can shoot while they're engaged, hit on twos, be guided. Like, the broadsides are good. The downside is that they're very slow, right? We know that. But really, if you're playing broadsides, you should just be putting them in strat reserves anyway for most games, just to get them further up the board if you need them there. Maybe put one in the backfield to lock down a lane, and then 1 or 2 in reserves. So these are good, right? I do think, thank you, Proxy Hammer, and your army for doing this to my Ravagers. I do think 115 is a little too much. Not that they're not worth 115. I just think, like, it really hurts us when, man, this was like the one, outside of Scourges, this was like the competitive unit. So what I play is this, and I love these things. And yes, they're 3 dark lances, single shot each. I love how the weapon is its literal body and that it just, yes, right, absolutely, man. I prefer these to Ravagers. Now, we're going to talk about why. Yes, they are slower. They are a little bit lower in toughness, but they are Coven, so you can -1 to wound them. They have a 3-up base save, and with the way cover works, they'll basically always have cover for most games. They're 7 wounds, they have a 5-up feel no pain, and they have the same 6-up invuln. So they're a 3-up save, 6-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain, with access to -1 to wound, and you can take 2 in a unit. Now, each one has a twin splinter cannon and 2 macro scalpels. I just want a battle suit that is just a big sumo suit that actually engages foes in close combat. And actually, that would be hilarious, right? And it needs to look like just like a giant stealth suit. So, like, but the old ones, the old metal ones, so they're just real round and kind of goofy looking. So what I like on these is I like the twin Drukhari Haywire Blaster, because I get 2 shots, because these are ballistic skill 4. Are the tells those are the scorpion looking models on the flight bases? Yes. They are ballistic skill 4, which kind of sucks. And I'm not going to lie to you there. But hitting on 4s re-rolling isn't the worst thing you can have. They are strength 3, neg 1, 3 damage, but they're also anti-vehicle dev wounds. So, like I said, like, Dark Lances aren't the only anti-tank we have. They're the only anti-everything we have. And what I've seen, or what I've just started doing because of, you know, 4-up invulns on vehicles, right? Like crisis suits, and there's some marine units that can get them. And even Dreadnoughts having just like a 2-up base save and having access to cover. And all these different things that I'm seeing now, and like Guard having access to a 4-up invuln on even a Baneblade, right? Like, I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm done dicking around with this. Right, and re-rolling wounds because all of their ranged weapons are twin linked. And that's the other key thing. Hey, man, I appreciate you jumping in, and I appreciate the suggestions. A lot of them were real good and helpful, so hope you had a good time. Thanks for watching. I've just started doing Haywire because it's like, okay, I already have a bad interaction into high toughness. If you're T12 or higher, I'm going to struggle because at best I'm wounding you on 4s. How can I mitigate this? Well, I'll just make it so that you don't get to roll dice if you're a vehicle, and then I'll just accept that if you're a monster, I'm going to have a tougher interaction into you, and that's okay. But what armies really have a lot of monsters that they put on the table, right? The 2 main ones are Nids and Demons. So it's one of those like we already have a tough matchup into those because a lot of those bugs are already like T12 or they have like these feel no pains or invulns or whatever. So it's just like, okay, if I can bypass one of their die rules and just always wound them on 4s, that's what I'm going to do. So a lot of my lists are running 2 units of 2 of these, and they are anti-vehicle dev wounds, twin linked. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll give them the twin liquefier gun to give them some anti-infantry interactions, right? They auto hit, they're strength 4, neg 1, and they're also twin linked. So I can just be like, I'm going to shoot you with this. What that does is, if you've got Craft Worlds players, like we have some local ones here, or you've got other Drukhari players, or you got even guard players, anybody like that, they're going to really think twice about moving within 12 of these if they know I can overwatch and just be like, cool, these auto hit, I'm going to kill some of your shit. Like, that's just the interaction we're having. For melee, I'm on the fence. I tend to run the gauntlets because they're strength 8 and they're -2 and they're 3 damage. So they will kill most infantry, if not almost all infantry, on a failed save. And they're pushing custodes to their invuln. They're pushing terminators to their invuln. So we can push a lot of things to invuln or die. The -1, like the hitting on 4s is kind of ass when the scalpel hits on 3s. It's one of those, like, I understand why it interacts that way. It just is a little weird. Absolutely. They're real good into Eldar. The only thing they don't perform well into for Eldar is like the Incarn. But really, the biggest issue I'm running into there is that I'm just wounding it on 5s or 6s with all my attacks. But 3 damage means I'm actually still doing 2. And I still have Dark Lances in my list for things like the Incarn. And really, what I've started doing with the Incarn is the same thing I've always done with her. And just been like, cool, she's going to be able to do whatever she wants, and that's just the way it is. What I'm going to focus on doing is I'm going to focus on killing all your point scoring units and hoping that the Incarn doesn't table me in the process. And again, like, if I see the Incarn and the Avatar in the same list, I will typically pick one of them and be like, we're going to try to kill this one, and then the other one's going to get to do whatever it wants, and that's just the way it is. The Ichor Injector is a single extra attack, so again, I'm not sold on really why we would want that. It doesn't do anything when we could just be like, man, I'll just take the liquefier gun. Because what you do is you replace one of your macro scalpels, right? If you come down, one of your macro scalpels gets a chain flails or a Talos gauntlet, and then the other macro scalpels either gets the injector or the liquefier gun. And I can't think of a single reason why I would want the injector over the liquefier, other than maybe that's just how I built my model and I have to play it WYSIWYG, right? So I've just kind of dropped all the Ravagers out of my list to bring more Talos, and I found that they are very good at tanking objectives. Again, won an RTT not that long ago. One of my games was into a Necron player, and I just charged him in the middle of the board, and he didn't really have a way to fall back and do anything. So we just sat there, and because I was engaged, I was -1 to hit. Absolutely complete trash. There's literally no reason to take it. What it probably should do is maybe give whatever weapon you have equipped twin linked, and then you now have a reason to take it. Because even taking 2 macro scalpels, I don't think does anything for you, right? Or I'll have to look into that, because if 2 macro scalpels gives you 10 attacks, then running 2 macro scalpels is probably the way to go. But I'm gonna have to look into that interaction, because every other unit that has 2 weapons, it just gives them twin linked, but nowhere on here does it say what happens if you have 2. So it's just a weird interaction. So it's one of those, like, just going to have to do some research on this. I never considered it until we started talking about it. So I like the Talos. And again, Talos are good into almost every army because most things aren't going to one-shot your Talos. And being able to -1 to wound them with the Feel No Pain is pretty good. I think you have to pick. I agree. That is true. You do have to pick which melee weapon you fight with, but it doesn't make sense that you would start with 2 macro scalpels then, right? So I'll have to dig into it in the core rules. I doubt there's anything in the core rules. You know what? We're on Wahapedia. We could just find out now, friend. Warhammer 10th. Books introduction. All right, so if more than one enemy unit has been melee attacks with the same. More than one enemy unit has been targeted by an attack, blah, blah, blah. If your unit, yep. Which models? Yep. Which models can fight? Select weapon when you select. Weapon a model is equipped with is described on its data sheet. If a model has more than one melee weapon, it can only use one of them. So you must now. Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, there's nothing in here. So it just seems kind of stupid to have 2 of the same weapon as the base loadout. I don't understand. Again, it's one of those where it is a classic example of just like GW being GW. That being said, this is what I started playing instead of Ravagers, and even early on, if you guys saw any of my videos, you know I was big. Like, even in the index review, I was like, man, Talos look really good. And then Scourges. Let's talk about Scourges, because one of the things I also started doing is I started running 1 unit of Scourges with Haywire, and we're going to talk about why, right? When you look at the Dark Lances, it is a single shot hitting on 4s. And man, even with rerolls, you're getting 3 hits, which is, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. And they do have the grenades keyword, which I like. And that's another thing to keep in mind is some of our stuff has grenades, and it's a little silly. Actually, I wonder if the Talos do. I bet not. But what we're looking at here is I can take a single shot and get 3 hits. And then if it's wounding on 3s, I'm actually only going to get 2 wounds. And then if it's a 4-up invuln, I'm only going to get 1 through. But with the Haywire, I get double the shot. So now I'm up to 8 shots, which means I'm going to get 4, and then I'm going to get 2 more, which is 6. Which means I'm going to get 3 through, and you don't get an invuln if you're a vehicle, which means you're just taking 9 damage. So it's one of those where it's just like, overall, I've just had a much better interaction. The one downside I will say to Haywire is that it is 24-inch range, so you have to really be careful about how you approach it with them, because the Overwatch can really hurt them. You kind of have to bait or fish those Overwatches out. Or you just have to target things that aren't worth overwatching with, like a Dreadnought, for example. You know, they're real good into battle suits, like the current Crisis Suit loadout, because they are typically running the Cyclic Ion, which is 18 inches. So I can stay out of that Cyclic Ion range and just be like, cool, you're going to pick up anywhere from 1 to 3 Crisis Suits every time this unit shoots you. Same with, like some of the Marine tanks are worth doing this to. Some of them aren't. Like the Repulsor just throws so many dice that it's not worth risking the Overwatch with them. And that's where the Talos come into play. I'll put both Talos into one of those. You want to Overwatch my Talos, that is what it is. But you're probably not killing it. Heat Lances are, I like them. I may consider running some Heat Lances on Talos just to see how that goes. Talos with 2 Heat Lance shots hitting on 4s re-rolling could get pretty spicy. Let's jump back to Talos real quick. They are 18-inch range, but they're melt to 3. And, they are assault, which means I can advance and shoot them, which gives you a little bit more mobility with the Talos than they would normally have. And you're going to reroll. You're going to burn those tokens. That is what it is. So it's one of those, like, I am going to test those out. Maybe I'll give those a test run on my stream game. I just think the Haywire is a little bit better. The single Heat Lance on Reavers. Yeah, the Reavers Heat Lance is pretty good. You can take one for every 3 models you have in the unit. I'm big sad that Reaver Melee just kind of sucks, right? Like Drukhari went from a pretty solid melee army to just like you have a couple units that are okay, and then you have some characters that are real good, and then you have some characters that make your shitty melee units decent. Like Incubi by themselves, they're okay. Like 2 damage attacks are pretty good, and they'll shred infantry. But you put Big Dick Drazar in there with him, and he does what he does, right? Like he does the Lord's work, and he makes them very good. Uh, Witches by themselves, man, we've had this talk. But you put a succubus in them and give them sustained hits, and now they're pretty interesting. Or you put Lilith in there, and they get +1 strength, right? And now they're pretty good. Yeah. And so like my solution for lone ops is actually Hellions. Uh, Interestingly enough, it's probably a similar kind of like thought process. I'm just going for the bonk instead of the shoot, right? Like I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna charge you with Hellions, and I'm just gonna clean you up with a lot of dice. And I still like Hellions. I still think they probably need a slight points drop, but I really just think overall the easiest way to fix a lot of the interactions in Drukhari is just like revamping 1 or 2 strats. Like that's it. Or 1 or 2 data sheets, right? Like you just do something rather than just points drops. Like this is going to end up being a horde army, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but it just seems kind of weird. So yeah, I've just kind of dropped Ravagers. I've started bringing a lot more Haywire. Overall, it's a pretty interesting interaction. The stream game I'm playing tomorrow, we're looking to bring some grotesques and put them on the table. I don't think they're going to be very good. Let's be honest. They're just way overpointed for what you're getting out of them. But maybe I'm wrong. I haven't really played with them. I just look at the data sheet and I'm just like, man, these are way too many points. Not worth. So we have definitely Hellions are cool. I used to love their grapple hook rule in 5th. And I love them in 9th. They were a staple for me. So much fun in 9th. To be able to just like scream them up the board. Generally speaking, they are a finesse unit, which is pretty funny because I've got a reputation for just kind of being like a hammer type player. But I definitely prefer like a lot of my finesse units, even though I have that reputation locally as just like a, like when I used to play Magic, I played green for a reason, man. Like I'm just gonna tap all my cards and math is for blockers, and that's just kind of the reputation I have right now. Yeah, that is pretty funny. That is one thing I like about Drazar is his once per game precision. I've definitely like induced some salt in some Marine players with that. Like, all right, I'm charging you. I'm going to activate Drazar. Oh, there's an apothecary in this unit. Pick it up. Now that we've done that, now we're going to swing everything else into the rest of your unit. Have fun, right? Like, no feel, no pain for you, buddy. We're not playing that game. All right, so we've definitely gotten a little off topic. That's okay. Before we stop for the day, because we're getting into pretty close to my lunchtime, and I've got some other things I got to take care of, I want to talk about a few things. If you're still with me, awesome. Hang out. We're going to, again, remind everybody stream games are going back on. We're going to start them back up on Thursdays. Draz is cool. He operates a lot like a solitaire in that way. He does. He is so money. And I remember doing a video on him and the Incubi and having so many people be like, you're so dumb. they're not good. And I'm just like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, I've never brought them to a game and just been like, man, what a waste of points these were. Like, even if they don't interact, the way they can dictate the flow of the game makes them worth it. And that's really the big thing there. Because even sending them into demons, right, like greater demons, you're throwing enough dice, and the +1 to wound, Drazar's going to wound most greater demons on 4s, and then the incubi on 5s. With 3s re-rolling and then 5s, you're going to get enough through that you're doing damage. And then the same with Drazar, like you're just throwing enough dice, and if you get spicy rolls, they're dev wounds anyway. So, like, to me, they're just a staple unit. I've the list I'm playing on stream Thursday isn't running them, and it's gonna be weird. Like, I'm gonna feel a little naked. Blood Bowl kicks off in January. We are gonna stream one game every round. It's 2-week rounds. So if you're a Blood Bowl fan, that'll be pretty cool. Like I said, 40k streams are kicking back off. We've got one this Thursday, one next Thursday. It's going to be Craft Worlds versus Drukhari this Thursday. And then it's Kron's next Thursday. But I don't know if I'm playing against the Kron's player or if we can get another player in. I'd like to get another player in just because I like to be able to dedicate more of my attention towards the stream itself. It allows me to kind of communicate with the audience a bit better. It allows me to do things a little bit better. So, if I can, I'll get somebody to play him. If not, it's going to be me. But it's going to be Kron's Codex next week, Craft Worlds this week. We're looking at a Sam Hine or same, I don't know, whatever, however you pronounce it. Like, it's a bike heavy list. It'll be pretty interesting. I'm looking at a very homunculus Coven heavy list. We're bringing the Tantalussi back out just because I love it and it's a lot of fun and it makes me laugh. And so I'm actually not running a single Venom. It's going to be an interesting list and an interesting game. Good chance I get my teeth kicked in. We'll see. That being said, anything else I need to talk about? Bam, bam. Probably be looking to do some AOS streams here soon, too. Those will be in addition to my normal stuff. And as always, like, we're going to be doing more Old World. We're going to be doing more AOS, but we are still going to make sure we're doing Drukhari. We are still going to make sure we're doing 40k content. We're just trying to branch out, get a little bit more games involved, and A, grow the audience, B, just kind of show people what else is out there. Not just from GW, but just in general. But we're going to start with the GW games. As always, if you've got questions, comments, concerns, you can always leave them in the comments section of the videos. If you do TTS and you ever want to get a game in, don't be afraid to reach out to me. I'm not the best with TTS just because I don't do it often. I am a little slow, but if our availability lines up and you guys are interested, I'm more than willing to play. We can do it. You know, be forewarned, I tend to play a lot of silly shit, and I'm kind of a goofball. And I like to drink a beer or two while I play. So outside of that, thanks a lot for watching. Everybody's awesome. Appreciate you. We are going to do... This is what's called the Midwest goodbye. If you don't know, it's when you know it's time to go, but you keep thinking of things that you need to let people know, right? Goodbye. And now I'll talk for a minute. Goodbye. That's the Midwest goodbye. The other thing, we're gonna do some list videos because we do have some multiple events coming up. We're gonna do a list video about my 6th January AOS tournament. We're going to do a list video about the 40k competitive league we've got coming up. We're going to do a list video about a GT I'm going to be trying to get to in January. And then we're going to do a list video about an RTT at the end of the month that I'll be playing in. So next week, most likely, we're going to have... We may just do like one massive discussion, or we may just do 3 different streams where we talk about different lists. So for real now, you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching. Maybe, if I can remember how to stop. Oh, my